You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode 116.
A podcast uncovering identity, color, and love, where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Bias.
We're talking about commitment, the C word. And a lot of times when we think about commitment to another person, commitment in a relationship, particularly in a romantic relationship. And we're going to talk about commitment also in a relationship, the relationship with yourself. So we've been talking about time management, in particular, that there's two problems really when it comes to managing your time. Whatever it is that you want to do with your time, be more productive, create free time for yourself, family time, whatever your goal is with time, it'll fall into two buckets. And the reason why I like looking at it this way when I was taught this concept was because really anytime you're presented, when I've gone through my whole time management process and I continue to learn and grow from it, is that I can see where it is that I'm having a problem. And in the past episodes, I talk about planning, and that's where I recommend you start is planning. Because if you are having a to-do list and the amount of time that takes to do each of those tasks equals 70 hours and you have only, let's say, 35 hours available to you, then that's a planning problem. You have created a to-do list and you can still do that 70 hours, but in 1 week's time, 35 hours need to be scheduled, and then the next week, maybe you schedule some other things that got done from the first week and you can put it into the second week. So a lot of times that math problem really needs to be solved first, because you can't really talk about commitment without understanding whether or not you actually are trying to fit in 70 hours into 35 hours that you have available to you to do your work. You can usually tell you have a commitment problem when you're procrastinating stuff, when you have inaction, or not doing the thing that is on your schedule. After you plan it, you're not doing it, so there's a bunch of inaction. Or easily distracted. Distractions come up, people come to you, you decide, okay, I'm going to deal with this rather than what's on your schedule. And no matter what type of schedule you have, you can solve for the planning and the commitment. If you have a demanding boss, a demanding child, a schedule that you work shifts. I worked shifts at one point in my life for 4 years where I worked midnights and then afternoons and then mornings, and I'd switch each week. So whatever your schedule is, it can still fall into understanding whether it's a planning, how to plan around those different types of schedules, or it's that commitment part of it. So if you're worried about that your schedule doesn't fit things and you can't get things done because of all of these things, it's really a planning problem. And there are different kind of tips and tricks that I have talked about in this episode and in previous episodes about how to plan different ways, even if you are stay-at-home parent, if you're staying at home and working at home with your kids, all of those things are different tips around different ways to plan your schedule. Now, commitment is you have something on your schedule and then you procrastinate, you don't do whatever it is that you have planned in that time slot to do. So it comes, let's say, Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, time to exercise. And I have that on my schedule to exercise, by the way. And sometimes I don't do it. And that's a commitment problem right there. I have made a commitment to myself. If I had a commitment to go have coffee with a friend at 10 o'clock Saturday morning, I would show up. Unless I was sick, unless there was something emergency that an emergency means there's blood. That is what an emergency means. Or you are physically ill, which usually involves some sort of fluid. And so that really tells you your commitment to yourself. When you have something on your schedule, and what is the reason that you don't follow through on it? Because you usually will follow through for somebody else. Most people will show up to a lunch with their friend, a lunch with their boss. They'll show up to all of those things. But when it comes to something that's commitment to yourself, to the thing that you put on your agenda, we tend to put it off, not do it, and then later on, we sit in a bunch of guilt and regret. And there is a really simple answer for why procrastination, all of those things happen. It is our emotion at that moment and when it comes to do that thing that is on our agenda. We are experiencing some emotion that is uncomfortable to us. The idea of going to exercise, the idea of making that video that we want to post on social media. There is something that comes up, and most likely it's a negative emotion. And whatever that emotion is, and for this episode, and even generally, it's not that you necessarily need to label it correctly. A lot of times it's doubt, the usual shame, I'm not worthy. It's usually one of those big common things. But you're feeling it in your body. You're having some sort of experience in your body, and what's happening is you're trying to avoid it. So you don't do it. You want to avoid the negative feeling that's going to come up to go exercise, to go make that video, that doubt that comes up, the feeling that you have if you're going to go to the gym and you don't like how you look in your workout clothes. All of those kind of feelings that you have, they're coming up when you're about to go do that thing. And if you notice, sometimes we say, well, I'm not motivated in that moment, right? Because you're having a negative emotion, and it isn't motivation, because motivation feels pretty good. And we're waiting for this positive emotion, and it's not going to arrive. And one of the best things I was ever told was that feeling's never going to be there. You're never going to feel like doing it when it's on your agenda. I'm never going to feel like exercising. I'm never going to feel like making that video when it's written on my agenda. That motivation isn't going to be there. And that's okay. And that is 100% normal. You're experiencing negative emotion because you're doing something new. When you're cultivating, especially a new habit and a new way of doing something, whether that's around exercise, whatever the goal is, there is going to be that uncomfortability with it. And a lot of times we need motivation, and when that's not necessarily true. We only need about 2% motivation. That's it. We don't need the full, I'm going to do this. What we need to do is just get ourselves just a little bit out of that doubt that's overcoming us, and just kind of get that next step from that doubt, from those negative emotions we're experiencing. So here's how you increase your commitment to yourself. Sometimes just even hearing that it's about a commitment to yourself, just like it is a commitment to another person. Sometimes people have a shift like that, like, oh, I commit to other people, I can commit to myself too, and boom, it works. But sometimes I know in certain situations, I need a little bit. And what helps me is to think of maybe not the whole big thing that I'm trying to go after, but what is it that I need to do in the next minute? So, for example, and the best example I have is exercise, because there have been moments where I've started and stopped exercise, and restarting again, I always need to remember, okay, I'll put my shoes on. I'll put my exercise pants on. That's it. I break it down into the tiniest steps possible. It isn't that I'm going to the gym. It's I'm going to put my exercise pants on. I'm going to put my exercise shirt on. And then the next step is I'm going to put my exercise shoes on. And that's what I call the 2% motivation. It's just the one next step. It isn't, you need to go all the way over to let's get to 100% motivated. You don't have to manage your mind. You can have all of that doubt. You can have all of those negative emotions. You don't need to go all the way to the positive. In fact, I recommend you don't. You stay in that negative emotion and recognize that that is part of this human experience. That means that you are doing something unbelievable. When you are experiencing a negative emotion, it means you are reaching for something. You are going out there and you're creating something. You have that negative emotion, and you do that one next step, and do that next step. Break it down into the tiniest step. And then you'll notice when you have that whole outfit on, you're like, well, I might as well go. I already have the whole outfit on. And that's that 2% motivation. And guess what? When you get to exercising, the rest of the motivation comes. Because when I start to do it, and I could quit, right? I did one set. Let's say I'm doing my strength training. I did one set. it has never happened where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do the rest of my sets. Motivation then meets me. I get the rest of that motivation to meet me and carry me through the next sets of reps that I need to do in my training. There will be a lot of temptations along the way. You will get a notification on your phone. Somebody will call you. Someone will need help right away or something. All of those things are available for you to say, it's not blood. There's nothing to do. Nobody's in an emergency. Nothing is life-threatening. I'm going to make this commitment, and I'm going to put my pants on. And you know the end of that story. As soon as you put your pants on, and as soon as you go do that thing that was on your agenda to do it, you'll get that motivation. And at the end of that, when you have completed that, how do you feel? Start with that negative emotion. Take it with you. Do that next little thing that you need to do, just that one little next step to bring you closer to doing that task, and then see how you feel. That's all I have for you this week. I'll check back with you next.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.